This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview. To the Research Talks podcast here on Stockbox with Alan Green. And Alan, I know you've been had a site visit, haven't you? I'm looking forward to hearing about that because you're going to be talking about Anglesey Mining, where you were over these last couple of days. But today we're going to be talking about Metals One and Anglesey Mining. So, take it away. I think you want to start with Met One.
Met One indeed, yes. And good morning, good afternoon,
indeed.
Everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Metals One, we did talk about Metals One, of course, at the IPO early this year. Of course, that was an IPO with the shares at 5p, market capitalization of 10.4 million. The company came to market with, and to be fair, the company has, and the share price has held up pretty well. We're now. The share price has come off as investors sort of wait for events to happen, but we're now starting to build again. We had that brief dip under 3p, and I'm talking, of course, in comparative terms to the way the market has, shall we say, punished, if that's the right word, other companies in the sector. But we have here a company with an objective to build a battery metals portfolio. Nickel, of course, used in lithium-ion batteries, greatly contributing to the EV and clean tech revolution. Cobalt has to increase by 500% in the next few decades, part of those crucial lithium-ion batteries. And, of course, copper, and we're going to talk about copper also with Anglesey Mining too. Now, bear in mind, an electric car, an EV, contains up to 10 times as much copper compared to a conventional internal combustion vehicle. That gives you some idea of the sort of demand for metals and why the prices have been creeping up. And arguably, metals like copper have a far broader spread of appeal and application. But nonetheless, I think what Metals One have done is position themselves with some advanced projects in Scandinavia. Firstly, in Finland they have the Black Schist projects. That's SCHIST, operatorship and initially 100% ownership. And of course, the Black Schist projects are adjacent to the Talvivaara mine, which is Europe's largest operating nickel mine. And there's an inferred mineral resource estimate across this project of 28.1 million tons of Talvivaara style deposits. And of course, what that infers is that the geology and the anomalies are contiguous. So if they're already mining at Talvivaara, then there's a very good opportunity really to develop a mine or expand the existing operations of Talvivaara to incorporate this at some point. But of course, it's got to be proved out first of all. So the estimates at the moment, the inferred estimates are 53,800 tons of nickel, nearly 28,000 tons of copper, 3,500 tons of cobalt, and 180,000 tons of zinc. And this is at the Rautavaara prospect there too. So the company has other targets across the Kaunuu schist belt at the Paltano project. And the proceeds from the placing, so they raised 2.2 million gross, which netted back to 1.7 million, has gone to provide equipment, process data, geophysical and geochemical surveys, and of course facilitate the diamond drilling. And I'll come to that in a second because as we speak, the bit is turning there. Also additional license applications, preliminary and upgraded resources. And of course, there is a farming arrangement here with Gunsynd, who are farming in to take up to 25% of the Black Schist projects, which will then mean Met One will hold 75% of the assets. The second asset, before I come to the detail on that Gunsynd farming, the second asset is in the Rana project in brownfield site in Norway. And of course, this is the Rana nickel project. It's an 80% non-operating interest, but of course this is analogous to the Voisey Bay nickel copper PGM deposit in Newfoundland in terms of its geology, the modelling, and there's potential there for massive nickel, copper, and cobalt in the land that circles the former Bruvan operating mine. The operating operator of the Rana project is Kingsrose, ASX listed Kingsrose, which has an opportunity to earn up to 75% over 8 years, spending $15 million on developing it. And of course, the Kingrose at the end will hold 75%, Met1 will hold 15%, and also Global Energy Metals will hold the other 10%, Global Energy Metals being a TSX listed company. So since the listing, things have really started to move in quarter three. So the Rana operator Kingsrose updated the markets on holes 1 and 2 at the Ranbogan prospects and the Bruvan prospect hole. They recorded high-grade nickel, copper, cobalt, sulfide mineralization, 9.3 meters at 1% nickel, 0.3% copper, and 0.1% cobalt, which the chief executive, Jonathan Owen, said confirmed the scale potential and also, of course, the prospectivity of this Rana intrusion. Then, to provide further support for the share price, non-exec directors Dan Mailing, and of course I met and spoke with Dan at the one-to-one We Are Mining conference, which was on a few weeks ago, and also Craig Moulton. Both of them bought shares in the open market at 3p, and so, really provided a floor, which is why I think we're seeing the share price start to move up from there now. But of course, they've done so, ahead of the results, which are starting to roll out now. Then in November, a further £250,000 was added to the pot. So that's on top of the money that was raised at the IPO. Of course, Gunsin made their first payment of £250,000 to the Met1's Finland subsidiary, which is Finost. And of course, at that point, it has issued shares to the value of 6.25% of Met1. Proceeds again going towards the exploration program, the modelling of the existing data, geophysical surveys, and of course the drilling work that's now being undertaken at Rautavaara and Paltamo licenses. Also during November, further progress, a license extension was granted at the Router 911 license at the Black Ships project, which gives Met1 and the operators there the rights to prospect on all lands there until November 2026. So that's ample time to really prove up the prospectivity. And indeed, management said at that point the Black Ships inferred mineral resource estimate should significantly increase from the current 28.1 million tonnes, which of course I referred to at the outset. In addition, 6 further new license applications and reservations at the Rautavaara and Paltano projects, which of course expanded the reach and really ensures that the Met1 operating team on the ground there have access all areas to that. So the drilling has now started. The company announced the other day that drilling was underway at Rautavaara at the R1 target, or the S1R1 target, in the 911 license area, which is also known as the R1 hook. So the bit is turning. Management are extremely enthused and excited about what's going to come from here, obviously given the progress to date. And obviously, Dan Mailing and Craig Moulton and the other shareholders who have bought the stock at 3p, should be excited about what's to come. Just a word again on the management of the group. I mentioned Jonathan Owen, the chief executive there. Jonathan Owen has got many years of experience. He's a geologist and a mining analyst. We have of course Dan Mailing, I've mentioned already, Wilton Willesey and Craig Moulton also on the board, and a very experienced management team to oversee the progress of the group as it moves towards proving up these resources and increasing that minerals resource estimate for black schist. But overall, looking at the valuation of the company at the moment, it's trading on a valuation of just 6.5 million. And I think with these projects advanced as they are, particularly with the black schist being adjacent to Tal Vivara, I think we can look forward to and reasonably expect some exciting grades to come out of the ground there in the coming weeks and months.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Alan. It's good to hear about a company there purely focused on the battery metals space, the exploration for the EV revolution and all the green economy. So over in Scandinavia as well, so a good jurisdiction to operate in. I'm very supportive of projects like this and mining projects. So thank you for that.
Yes, and of course, Metals One are very much their focus is very much on the battery, battery industry. And if you go to the website, there's a very good map which shows the project locations and of course the EV production hubs throughout Europe. So they're aiming to become a key hub in that process. Anglesey Mining. Okay, so Anglesey Mining has been it's one of the longest standing listed companies in London. AYM is the EPIC code, listed in 1984 initially, and it's the 100% owner of the Paris Mountain project. That's Paris spelled P-A-R-Y-S. So if you're searching for it on the net, if you Google or you search for hashtag Paris Mountain, you'll find information and views and news and views on that. So the Paris Mountain it's world famous. It has a great deal of history, and it's been confirmed as a site of prehistoric mining, signs of Roman activity, and most recently they proved up the Bronze Age man was indeed in the ground there, seeking various metals to furnish his tools. So modern exploration began in the 60s. Canadian Industrial Oil and Gas drilled it in the 70s. A company called Kamenko found the polymetallic zones in the early 1980s. As I said, Anglesey was formed in 84 and floated on the stock exchange in 1988. Sorry, not 1984. So during since then, a great deal of surface drilling and geological mining and metallurgical studies have taken place. And there is currently a preliminary economic assessment in place for the project. Currently, there's a resource base in total of 16.1 million tons at 1.9% copper equivalent. And that's combined. That's a combination of 5.3 million tons at 4% combined base metals and 10.8 million tons at over 2.5% combined base metals inferred. Also, just worth noting that the company has the control of the mining infrastructure to the north of the project. So if you look at the actual map of the area. To the north of the project, you've got the big mining gantry, you've got the shaft, and also a lot of historical workings. To the southeast of that, you have the earlier mine, and this place is incredible. It is we were taken around the old mining the old mining works, and you've got this landscape which is hues of red, gold. It's quite incredible. It looks like a lunar or Martian landscape, and indeed it's been used as film sets for numerous science fiction movies over the years, including Mortal Kombat. It was used for that particular movie. There are soakaway ponds also to the south as well, and indeed years ago those soakaway ponds, which are pretty full of pretty acidic and full of the metals as it rains. Of course, the water drains through all of the ore and it drains into these ponds. It was initially allowed to drain into Dulles Bay, and years ago the old sailing ships used to come into Dulles Bay, moor there for a couple of weeks, and of course all of the copper content would completely clean the barnacles from the hull of the boat. So, it's a fascinating history to the place. But as we come forward, now the team on site, and we were out on the site with the managing director, Joe Battersill, who has an encyclopedic knowledge of the project, and of course the gentlemen there working on the site, the site operators, and they are in the process of drilling at the moment. They are drilling in an area called the Northern Copper Zone. Now, there are a number of zones to the area. You have the engine zone and the White Rock zone, all of which have contributed towards the PEA. But it's the Northern Copper Zone, really, which is the largely unexplored area, and that's what Joe and the team at the company are currently undertaking. But what was particularly exciting for me was seeing the core, because we were in the core shed looking at the core coming out of the ground, and the team were drilling. We went on to up to the drill pad yesterday morning, spoke to the guys, saw some of the core in the trays, and then we went back up to the core logging sheds to look at the core that had come out of the ground the previous day. And they were getting very excited, and indeed I was excited just looking at this, and I'll be posting some of those pics up on social media in the coming week or so. The core is believed certainly between 580 and 590, some 10 meters of core, looks to contain lots of chalcopyrite and considerable amounts of copper, possibly as high as 3-4% copper over 10 meters. And the extension of strike and that anomaly goes on for probably the best part of a kilometer. So you get some idea of the scale of this thing. It's absolutely huge. More importantly, what was referred to as a taxi driver test. If you jump in a taxi in the area and you talk to the taxi drivers, the locals are all for it. It's been there for years, so it's it's quite a remote area in some ways. Although you've got Holyhead Port, of course, nearby, but it's in terms of creating prosperity for the region. The infrastructure is there already. The council are working with them. They have planning permission through to 2028. And after that, it's a bit like I was chatting to the team there. It's a bit like if you've got planning permission for a loft conversion and then that planning permission lapses, it's very easy just to reinstate that permission. And with the Paris Mountain project, it's exactly the same process. So when it comes to 2028, they can just renew and continue from there. So we then come to, as I say, the test of the locals, which is fully. There's full support there for the team, and what Joe and the team are doing, they're slowly building and developing the asset there, because there is the existing PEA, of course, has proved up the numbers I mentioned just now, the 16.1 million tons. But of course, that's the PEA currently demonstrates a 12-year mine life, producing some 15,000 kilos per ton. Copper equivalent, capex of $99 million, and a net present value of, as it stands right now, of $120 million. But a spot NPV, based on the grades they're putting out of the ground, is more than double that. So you can actually look on the website. There's a presentation that's just been published there, which will give you an idea of the potential there and the sheer size of the asset. But what the company announced a few days back, the metallurgical test rock from the White Rock and engine zones, and certainly compared to the PEA estimates, at the moment we're seeing recovery grades 32% ahead for copper, plus 5% for zinc, plus 5% for lead, and for the overall recovery grade for gold, ahead 63% of the PEA estimates. So that's a good place to be, because you've got estimates on the PEA, but the actual numbers that are coming out of the ground and being proved up now are comfortably ahead of that. So I mentioned that core sample that we saw yesterday. That, along with others, has gone off. It is going off to be assay tested, and that will be probably about 3 to 4 weeks. But certainly the sample that we saw yesterday morning, the high grade sample, will be prioritised. So we should hear news back on that fairly promptly. So then you look at peer group comparisons. So currently, the Anglesey Mining's market capitalization is 6.5 million, pretty similar to Met One, and it doesn't tell the whole story because there are two more projects which I'll come to in a second. So peer group comparisons, you've got Golden Grove in Western Australia that has 48 million tons of copper. You've got the Rosebery project in Tasmania. That's got 50 million tons of copper. Golden Grove, Western Australia, is owned by 29 Metals ASX. That's got a market capitalization of about 340 million, and also has other projects within its ownership. And then we have MMG, which own the Hong Kong listed company that own the Rosebery project in Tasmania, Min Metals Group, and they are turning over billions every year and have a market cap to boot. So at the very least, talking to analysts that came with us on the trip, I mean, we're looking at a 4 times upside easily, just to really take into account the current state of play, and that's before the additional drill holes go into the ground and the core from those drill holes come out from the northern copper zone. So it's hugely exciting. It's at I believe, a pivotal point in its evolution, and I think we're going to see that the news and the grades that are going to be coming out of the ground and the assay results that come back, I think, are going to put this project onto a different footing altogether. I'm just now going to cover the other projects that are owned by the company, because these are also highly significant in terms of value. Of course, Mark, we've spoken about Cadence Minerals and the Amapa Iron Ore project. Cadence currently owns 32% of the Amapa Iron Ore project, while Anglesey Mining owns 49.75% of the Grängesberg Iron project in Sweden, with a first right of refusal to increase that stake to 50.2% and 100%. So, in other words, to become the primary shareholder in the project. So a PFS has been commissioned in Grängesberg in conjunction with the Swedish partners. The project is extremely robust, a post-tax NPV of 688 million, operating costs of $53.6 per ton, and that's to get the ore out of the ground, take it to Oxford port, and pay back from the investment 3.6 years with a cash flow post-tax of 2.8 billion, which equates to about $130 million annually. So again, 50% of that, and these simply are not reflected in any way, shape, or form in Anglesey's share price, which is, I find, astonishing. The final asset the company has ownership is the Labrador Iron Ore Mines in Quebec, Canada. They own 12% of these. The iron ore projects in Mayonet, Newfoundland, and Labrador and Quebec. These projects and producing mines within those produced 3.6 million tons of iron ore during 2011, 2013. The Shefferville projects include numerous mineral claims, and again, that 12% stakes reflected across those claims. NPV, net present value, of 109 million post-tax, with 2 million tons per annum produced, and a 12-year mine life. So again, simply no reflection of that in the Anglesey Mining share price. Now, if I were a betting man, I'd say probably, given the progress at Paris Mountain, Anglesey may well look to move those projects on at some stage. It may not. It may decide just to sit there and be the benefit of or take the benefits of being a shareholder. But Paris Mountain itself is really quite exceptional. And Mark, of course, we were at the show speaking to various companies operating in the UK. Notably, I spoke to Cornish Lithium. The amount of money that company has raised privately, £6 million through a crowd cube, 54 million raised in total, and of course 24 million from UK Infrastructure Bank. Paris Mountain is it's further down the road than the Cornish lithium projects, in my opinion. And I think it's going to attract an awful lot of internal investment in the next months and years, or certainly over the next year. And who knows? I mean, there could be interest in a similar way, perhaps from organisations like the UK Infrastructure Bank or similar, because this is a great British project. The other element that's important to consider, we also took the route that the trucks have the authorization now to drive through to the Holyhead port. There is a loading jetty at the port that can be used to load the containers of the copper ore onto the ship for shipment. Could be shipped around to South Wales or, of course, to the rest of the world. And given Brexit has reduced traffic through that port by some 30%, the port are anxious to bring new clients in or new customers in to use the port for shipping. So it really is a complete plug and play, Anglesey Mining, and I think there's a huge valuation gap which will start to be addressed in the very near future.
And so the trip you went on, Alan, was there a purpose for that? Was it organised to sort of reinvigorate interest in the project, or what was the sort of premise?
I know some of the shareholders behind the project, and I was asked to come along to take a look. And also there, of course, Mike, we spoke about VVV Resources a few weeks back. Jim Williams, who's the chairman of VVV Resources, is a local. He lives down the road in Conwy, so he was keen to see the project too. And there are lots of relationships that go back a long way there. But I was asked to go along and just speak with the people and just find out about it. And of course, it's I'm very glad I did, because I think anyone that gets an opportunity to go there, the Dom and Shane and the team there are very friendly, very welcoming, and I'm sure you can speak to management. And if you want to go and view it yourself to form your own opinion, then they'll be very glad to show you around and probably take you into the core shed so you can have a look at the latest core that's come out of the ground.
Indeed. Okay. And just picking up on something you said earlier on, was it 16 million tonnes at 1.48% copper was an historic resource? Is that right?
That's the PEA estimate. Okay, so
that's the PEA estimate, right? Okay.
That's right. And the company announced the grades from the metallurgical test work a couple of days ago. With copper, the recovery rate from just the white rock and the engine zones, not the Northern Copper Zone, which is the biggest zone there, I might add. So it doesn't include that at all. The recovery grades for copper there are 32% higher than the PA has estimated for. So that's really comforting, because I think what we're seeing is so far, a very conservative lowball estimate, and in every case, on every metric, the grades that are coming out of the ground, the test work is proving that the actual grades are far higher than those estimated for in the PA. So that base estimate for the mineral resource estimate is going to increase.
Okay. No, absolutely. Copper in the UK, you don't really hear about that, do you?
Well, you don't. It's and as I said, when we started talking about Metals One, 10 times more copper goes into an EV than goes into a conventional vehicle.
Is that why you think there's sort of is it fair to say that Anglesey, I don't want to say sort of mothballed, but is there renewed interest given the macro environment at the moment?
There's renewed interest. Importantly, there's complete support from the council, support from the locals. But I think the owners have, because the copper market's gone up and down over the years, and of course it gets to a point where you've got to prove the assets up, and they were finding it hard to attract investments at the times they went for it. And indeed, they looked at bringing some partners in before the credit crunch, and then and various other things have happened over the years. But I think now, where they are now, and particularly the grades have been have been looked at primarily on what's already known to be there. The Northern Copper Zone has not been really explored, and the grades that are coming out of the ground there now are proving that there's this huge intrusion under the ground. and they're coming in at the levels that were originally expected from years ago. And in the logging shed there are trays of old grades, which have good grades in them. But of course, they're old. They're old cores. You can't really rely on them. But certainly the appetite's there now, and I think there's a lot of interest from some fairly heavyweight investors to get the thing going.
And what's the immediate focus that they're going to be doing? They've got the PEA there. So is it to get a resource to go down the most detailed studies route?
Yeah, it's the next stage, of course, is PFS. So
it's the PFS, yeah.
So of course the progress from this point is that the company are going to be drilling through till March, April next year.
Okay.
So once the drilling work is completed, all those grades will come out of the ground. The assays will come back. Those will go into the PFS, and we're already seeing with the early metallurgical test work that's coming back that, as I said, the grades are comfortably ahead of the PA estimates. So there'll be an increased mineral resource estimate for the PFS, and then of course, given a lot of infrastructure is already there, the original site for a mine decline has been changed. They were going to drive another shaft down. They now have access to the side of the hill by the White Rock zone, so they'll go in there. It'll be a lot cheaper just to go in horizontally than vertically, and of course, the processing plant is across the road. So as you drive over Paris Mountain, the southwest, the old mine, and the actual current mine owned by Anglesey Mining are split. But across the road, there's land owned by Anglesey Mining, which will include the processing plant, and it'll come straight on a conveyor belt under the road into the processing plant. It'll get bagged up into the trucks, shipped down the road, Holyhead Port, and away to market.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for introducing Anglesey Mining to us today, Alan, and of course Met1 as well. It could be a very interesting year, certainly for both companies, really. But the Anglesey Mining there, going down further studies route. So, what's nice to have a homegrown project, isn't it? I think for London investors or British investors.
Well, I mean, just going back to, I'm still, really, really pleased, surprised, impressed by the interview with the information that came out of the interview with Cornish Mining. And of course, Jeremy Wraithall, knows the board, and he also knows Jim Williams too. So there's a great deal of familiarity with these projects. But the amount of money that's been raised and the interest in supporting British infrastructure like this, there's a copper mine. It's just there. It's just there to be mined. I mean, it's in the ground there. There's the anecdotal evidence is overwhelming, and when you've got the support of the council, the support of the locals, you've got the routes to market already established, you've got a jetty there waiting to be used at the port. It really is. This can be fast tracked. That's my point. It can be fast tracked, and in the next few years, it could completely transform the area and the region.
Indeed. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Alan, for your time today. I wish you a pleasant weekend. I myself am off to Cologne to soak up some of the Christmas markets. So, I'm looking forward to that. And we'll speak again, well, next week. I think it's probably our last one. Maybe not. Maybe we'll get another 2 in before Christmas. I know we need to do our top picks, don't we? A review of the year again.
Indeed.
It's always fun. But yeah, thank you very much, Alan, for your time.
Okay, Mark. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programmes at stopboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.